2-2. He drills one deep in the air to right field. Ryan O'Hearn has tied the score.
On May 20th, the Orioles became the second team to reach 30 wins in 2023. Since 2013, the first two teams of each season to reach 30 wins all made the playoffs except for two teams. The 2013 Rangers, who lost in a Game 163 tiebreaker, and the 2021 Padres, who underwent a historic collapse. According to Fangraphs preseason odds, that Padres team had a 92.3% chance of making the playoffs, which shows that even the most unlikely of scenarios can still happen. This applies to the 2023 Orioles too. During the preseason, the Orioles had a 10.4% chance of making the playoffs, the fourth lowest in the American League, yet today they're one of the league's best teams. Plus, with such a small payroll and a top-rated farm system, the future of this team is incredibly bright. So how did the Orioles end up in this position? To answer this question, we need to understand why finishing above 500 in 2022 was such a major accomplishment.
Figure this out and work his way out of this ball game.
Swing and a drive. This ball is deep. If it's fair, it's got a grand slam home run.
On June 24th, 2021, Orioles starter Dean Kramer gave up 6 earned runs in less than an inning of work. He was sent down to AAA the following day, and while he made one more appearance for the big league team, it was an abysmal season. Among every pitcher in 2021 to complete at least 50 innings, Kramer had the 6th worst ERA in the league. In fact, 6 Orioles were among the league's worst 25 pitchers in terms of ERA. Now you know why this team had the 3rd highest team ERA since 1950. The fact that much of this pitching staff remained on the team for 2022 is part of the reason why they were projected to be the league's worst team. To make matters worse, the team's ace, John Means, pitched only 2 starts before Tommy John surgery ended his season. Also, MLB's top pitching prospect at the time, Grayson Rodriguez, was on track to make his big league debut in 2022, until an injury sidelined him for much of the year. So, with all of this in mind, how did this team become the first since 1890 to have a record over 500 following a season where they lost 110 games? Well, remember those 6 pitchers from earlier? The ones with the really bad ERAs? 4 of them played for the 2022 Orioles, and they all improved significantly, including Drew Kramer, whose ERA plus was 22% above league average. Also, I have to mention Austin Voth, who began the season as a reliever for the Nationals before being claimed off waivers by the Orioles in mid-June. He had an ERA over 10 as a reliever for the league's worst team. Yet he got picked up by a team an hour north of DC and turned into arguably their best pitcher. Orioles closer Jorge Lopez did something similar as he went from being one of the worst starting pitchers of 2021 to one of the best closers of 2022. He had a big role in this team's bullpen transformation, a transformation so successful that the front office was comfortable enough to trade Lopez at the deadline. To be fair, the pitching had been consistent for much of the year, as opposed to the hitting. On May 20th, 2022, Rougned Odor hit a walk-off home run to beat the Rays 8-6. Still, the Orioles had the 3rd worst record in the American League, and the batting had not improved from 2021. But the day after this walk-off, a certain player made his long-awaited debut and changed everything.
Rutschman into right field, down the line, a fair ball. He's going to turn second, go for third. Rutschman into third base standing. His first hit in the major leagues.
On May 21st, 2022, number 1 prospect Adley Rutschman made his MLB debut, and not only did he produce an elite season, he produced a historic season. In MLB history, no rookie catcher has had a season with 5 B-WAR and a 130 OPS plus. To put this into perspective, 5 WAR means Rutschman was worth 5 wins above a replacement level player at his position, something only 29 batters did in 2022. Then, if we add the requirement of a 130 OPS plus, which means the hitter's OPS was 30% better than league average, this list goes down to only 20 players. The only 2 catchers here are Rutschman and JT Realmuto. Rutschman's impact on this team can't be overstated. after his debut, not only did the hitters improve, the Orioles' record of 67-54 after May 21st was the 6th best in the American League. Keep in mind, all of this happened not only with the injuries to Means and Rodriguez, but with 2021 breakout star Cedric Mullins having a down year. It really makes you wonder whether the Orioles season was a fluke. How do preseason projections get a team so wrong? Interestingly, in terms of expected record, which is based on how many runs you score and allow on average, the Orioles finished 4 games over their expected record, which was tied for the largest positive difference of 2022. The combination of a perceived fluky season, the lack of major offseason acquisitions, and the ultra competitiveness of the AL East are all reasons why this team wasn't projected to repeat their 2022 success. Well, this team has shown that they're better than you think.
High fly ball left field. Did he? Yes, he did! Adley 0 for 4. And that ball is belted. Right center field. Adley Rutschman sends us home with a walk-off homer.
Like 2022, the 2023 Orioles are playing a bit above their expected record, but they're just an overall better team this year. In 2022, the Orioles had an OPS plus just below the league average of 100. Today, they're a top 10 offense. So what changed? Well, this year's team is more patient as their walk rate has increased and strikeout rate has decreased. Last year, they had one of the league's highest swing rates, but this year, despite swinging less, they're making more contact. Even better, this contact is better quality than last year, resulting in a higher team average and slugging percentage. On an individual basis, guys like Rutschman, Austin Hayes, Anthony Santander, Ramon Urias, and Ryan Mountcastle have all improved upon or maintained their production from 2022. Even preseason #1 prospect Gunnar Henderson has recently improved on his slow start to the 2023 season. Although, the player I want to highlight most is Cedric Mullins. After a borderline MVP 2021 season, Mullins took a big step back offensively in 2022. However, this year, he once again looks like a contender for a 30-30 season. One reason for this is Mullins has always fared much better against right-handed pitching, but this year he's hit left-handers much better. Plus, he's chasing the ball less, walking more, and hitting the ball in the air more. These adjustments have turned Mullins back into an elite player, and he even recently made history as a result. On May 12th, Mullins hit for the cycle, with his final hit being a 3-run home run that solidified an Orioles win. Now, something to note from this game is that the Orioles were losing for a decent portion of it. In fact, as of May 24th, the Orioles have 32 wins, and at some point during 19 of these games, they were losing. To make so many comebacks this early into the season, it's clear this team has a lot of heart and doesn't back down when facing defeat, an incredibly valuable trait for any team pursuing playoff glory. On the other hand, if the offense is constantly having to overcome deficits, this sounds like a pitching problem. When you compare the starters and relievers, it's clear the rotation needs some upgrades. To be fair, you can't expect a team with a payroll lower than the Rays to have no weaknesses. Although, speaking of the Rays, Orioles owner John Angelos said teams like the Rays, Guardians, and Brewers are examples for how a small mid-market team like the Orioles can sustain success. Given the low payrolls of these 3 teams, you may be getting a sense of this team's financial future. Now, Angelos has said he hopes the Orioles can return to the top half of the league in payroll, but he also said he'd prove his transparency as an owner by opening the team's financials to media members, which he never did. So there's no way to know how much this team is willing to spend. But it's not like this team is incapable of surpassing a $100 million payroll, although this was when John Angelos' father, Peter Angelos, was the owner. Plus, many of these contracts ended up backfiring with the likes of Chris Davis, Alex Cobb, Mark Trumbo, and Ubaldo Jimenez not living up to their deals. Perhaps the Orioles are being overly cautious given this history. I mean, did you see the contracts that were given out last offseason? Take Carlos Rodon, for example. I predicted the Orioles would sign him, but so far his tenure in New York has been a disaster. Handing out big contracts is risky, But in the words of Padres owner Peter Seidler, there's also a risk in doing nothing. There's a middle ground that's suitable for non-big market teams, and while the Orioles made some mistakes in the past, neglecting potential upgrades limits the potential for sustained success, as seen with the end of this team's last playoff window. Between 2012 and 2016, the Orioles made the playoffs 3 times. Interestingly, the 2012 team had a lot of similarities to the 2022 team. Heading into 2012, the Orioles were expected to finish last in their division. Not only did they finish above 500, they went a step beyond the 2022 team and made the playoffs for the first time in 15 years. However, according to their expected record, they were incredibly lucky. Since 2000, only 5 teams have won 10 or more games above their expected record and made the playoffs. None of them made the World Series. The probability of maintaining a streak of this nature throughout an entire season is incredibly low. But the overall goal is to maintain a winning team for multiple seasons. This is done through crafty transactions and ideally, a great farm system. This is where the Orioles went wrong. According to Baseball Prospectus, their farm system never placed in the top 10 during this playoff window. Sure, there were some contracts and trades that look bad in hindsight, but the lack of emphasis in player development is what ultimately ended this playoff window. This is where the current day Orioles are different. Despite the call-ups of Rutschman, Henderson, and Rodriguez, they've maintained a #1 farm system for 2 straight years. Now, I don't expect them to maintain this position when the updated rankings come out mid-season. However, this isn't like 2012, where after Manny Machado was no longer a prospect, the quality of their system dropped significantly. Right now, the Orioles are tied with the Dodgers and Guardians for the most top 100 prospects with 7. And many of these prospects are projected to be big league ready within the next couple years, including current #3 prospect Jackson Holliday. While it's important to note that not all of these guys will succeed at the big league level, nor will the Orioles have room for all of them, with their elite farm system and low payroll, the possibilities for the future are limitless. If this team is still contending for a playoff spot at the trade deadline, pitchers like Eduardo Rodriguez and Lucas Giolito should become targets. After all, this team is seemingly defying the odds for the 2nd season in a row. You have to capitalize on this opportunity, right? Well, ultimately it comes down to what the owner is willing to spend. I understand not wanting to hand out a big contract if the player doesn't fit perfectly, but if the Orioles are in a position to make upgrades at the deadline and no moves are made, especially with John Means dealing with a setback, that's when there's a problem. Look at the Rangers. They took a very risky approach of signing big free agents before their prospects were ready, and it's paying off, even recently beating the Orioles 12-2. At some point, the Orioles front office needs to take that risk. At the very least, take a page out of the Braves playbook and offer Adley Rutschman an extension. Winning a championship is extremely difficult, so at least keep your homegrown star players in order to remain in contention for the long term. The Orioles have the blueprint for success, and while there's no perfect time to make upgrades, you can certainly not do enough. So, let's wait to see what happens next. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, leave a like if you did, and subscribe for more content just like this. Thanks for watching.